Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Look,
Whew.
I got it playing over here. There
Yeah.
we go.
Thank you. Oh, that
Thank
made my day. I actually remember that.
Do you remember it?
Yeah. Well, I was the one time I stole something, I was well, not the one. The first time I stole something, I think I was 6 or 5 or 6. And I was being babysat, and they had, you remember the Right On magazines?
Of course.
So there was a pullout of Michael Jackson on the wall of one of the children that I was staying with. And I took it and I folded it up and I wanted it. I was obsessed with the Jackson 5, particularly Michael Jackson. And yeah, but I also had a Flip Wilson. So this is from the Flip Wilson show.
That's from the Flip Wilson show, yeah.
Flip Wilson, and we've talked about him before, but I had the doll that had Flip on one side and Geraldine on the other, and you pulled the string.
Oh, yes.
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 And then Geraldine said, "The devil made me do it." You know, sucker, you know, you would just pull it and it would talk to you. I had that doll because I was obsessed with Flip Wilson for some reason, the little girl. He was on TV. And I didn't notice because I looked it up. 1970, his show was on. From 70 to 74, it was on NBC for 4 years. It was the second most watched television show on TV behind Marcus Welby, MD. Marcus Welby, MD was number 1. Flip Wilson was number 2. And Here's Lucy. Here's Lucy was number 3. Flip Wilson had more eyeballs than Lucy.
Wow. And Lucy had a 20-year by that time, 20-year head start between I Love Lucy and Lucille Ball. And there she is, and Flip Wilson. So why did they take him off? And I got a Flip Wilson biography around. I don't know. I won't be able to find it. Yeah, I guess so.
Just like this country, you know, you use a person or people or bodies to build your empire. And then once you have the numbers that you need, and they do it every season. So it's Flip Wilson, it's Cosby, then it's all of those in Living Color, you know, those shows, Living Single, Martin. You know, you build your empire and you get the numbers, and then you go get the advertising dollars. Then you say, I don't need these Negroes anymore.
How about that?
Yeah, but
does the model hold up now in the imminent post-network, even perhaps post-cable?
We're gonna see. I think this is the time to renegotiate everything. I think there's enough of us who have awakened, and we also realize we don't need these platforms. There's Mansa. There's you know, we're on YouTube. Like there are other we don't need networks anymore. So Larry Ellison and them have invested in something that we can all unplug from, and we should all unplug from it. And then what do you have? Because you need subscribers, right? What if we don't subscribe?
That's right. We are at that moment. And, you know, this is it. I think the word you said is the word we must center. Renegotiate. Well, yeah, renegotiate. When we decide to negotiate at all, because
that part,
you know, as you see now, the numbers, whether it be the Wall Street Journal or Financial Times or the business section of the New York Times, as this merger, if and when it occurs, because the Attorney General of California is going to have something to say and it's going to court, but if and when it occurs, it may very well be that if we do what we need to do this coming November, that it may not go through. It may just be more problem than it's worth. But you can see the stocks vacillating. I mean, not vacillating, fluctuating, going up and down. It's probably a money pit for the Ellisons, and it couldn't happen to a nicer family for this money pit.
I agree.
But they're buying. I mean, there was an article in the Times overnight about, I'm sure you saw it before I did, Sirius XM making noise about iHeartRadio. Did you see me?
I truthfully I'm focused on what it is that we need to do.
Oh, of course.
Whatever
Yeah.
people do, how does it impact us?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say less, Dr. Carr, but I think you know me well enough to know that I'm not moved by the machinations of,
No, I know
we're
that.
bulls. We're bulls. It's like the red cape. Okay, get out of our,
Get out of the way. We see you. We see
Yeah.
you with
Yo,
and the little funny hat on, and you're in the sights. That red cape isn't fooling anybody. Speaking of bull, of course, we're in that season of Taurus. So along with Mumia Abu Jamal, happy birthday to both of y'all. The birthday weekend.
yeah, yours on Monday, Clay Kane. I think tomorrow.
Okay, happy birthday, Clay. Yeah, we all here at the back of the month.
Yeah. Yo, it is. It's wild. I was thinking about how I must like to be. Bulls are supposed to be solitary. You don't see a pack of bulls nowhere. Nowhere. It's just like we like to be by ourselves. But for some reason, we've collected. One of Kevin Powell's birthday was on the same day as mine.
Oh wow! Yes, Brother Powell. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's about right. We figured out how to be together in space.
Yes, absolutely. Well, there are no baby bulls without adult bulls in community with at least one other person. So at the end of the day, it's still community. It just looks a little different for us. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But yeah, we figured we start with, are you planning to see this Michael Jackson?
Yes. Yes, I got my ticket. I already know how the story ends. Yeah, I bought my ticket.
Okay.
I just, and it was nice to see Jermaine with regular hair, in this.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? There they are on the Flip Wilson show in the early 70s. And who knew that one day that Jermaine's son would be playing his baby brother? So, and in between that performance that we just saw and the movie that people are going to go see lies the tale of what the hell happened to Black people. Because you know what I'm saying? That little boy with that afro and all them kids in that house with that family, with that mother, father, sisters, and brothers, stop. The love you saved may be your own. So, I mean, this is where's the love? Where is the love? That's the question we have to ask ourselves these days,
Is that why you want to start there? Because please don't go,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why. Because, I mean, the performance of that song that we are probably most familiar with in terms of a physical staging, setting aside years later after some of the surgeries and all of the celebrity with the shiny suits as they're singing as adults. But that little song, that little boy singing there, people typically think about the Ed Sullivan Show. But no, we're going to go Black for the exact reason that you just narrated. Flip Wilson, a name who some people this morning or today or whenever you're in community with us are learning perhaps for the first time. Or certainly if you knew the name, you may not have known how he held space at a time when there were only 4 broadcast networks, if you include public broadcasting. And not only held it, but held it down to stratospheric numbers, relatively speaking. And then, like a vapor, disappeared. It's good to be reminded of that because you're absolutely right. That was event TV. Anybody here, all the children got to stay up late. All the adults tuned in. And if you missed it, you missed it. There weren't even recording machines. So as you say, people who are of a certain age remember where they were when that particular appearance came on. So sure, we watched Ed Sullivan Show, but we watched the Flip Wilson Show. Right. And so, yeah, to see those Black people in that space.
I think the first time I heard that history doesn't repeat, it rhymes is from you. And I was thinking about, I've been thinking about time travel a lot. Don't ask me, but, I've been reading a lot about time travel. And I was like, if I had to travel backwards, which period would I go to? And it would be the 70s.
It'd be the 70s? It
would be the 70s. It would be the 70s. Earth, Wind, and Fire. There were No, I'm just thinking about songs of the kid. Like I'm thinking about the music of that time. My parents bought their first home in 1970, and it was, playing outside. There was like a free, like you said, Flip Wilson. There were TV shows. There were shows that reflected our culture. I don't know what year Soul Train came, but there were cartoons. Like it felt like Right On Magazine. There were Jet and Ebony. Like really, and I lived in a very, to this day, the blackest town in New Jersey. I lived in it.
Mhm.
I grew up in it,
Mhm.
and so there was an insular expression. Like I did not have to grow up in the wake of whiteness and have to negotiate myself around whiteness. Like I got to be fully black,
How about that?
and it shows up. And I imagine everybody in my neighborhood felt the same. Like there was no, are we good enough? What? There was no
Mm.
negotiation of our humanity, right? So, and the fashions, they're back. We had the bell bottoms, disco was coming in. There was something happening in the 70s where people felt free. And then, so I was asking you off mic, what happened? Because we keep rotating into these places, got Obama, and every child want to be Obama. And then we get Trump. There's a period, Jimmy Carter's president, nice man, good person. Then we get Reagan. Then we get crack. You know, it seems to be that period. And I don't know where we are now in it. I'm imagining there's gonna be, everybody's just tired of Trump, so maybe everyone will show up and vote in November, and then we'll get a president in 2028 that's actually a decent human being, and then we'll forget again. I don't want to forget. I want us to move into a place where we never end up back here.
Our struggle is to remember. Yes. And we've been consistent and dedicated to that remembering now for 320 consecutive weeks. And we've covered a great deal of, well, we've covered all of that period in one way or another when we've drilled down over the arc. And if you look in the bibliography, these long conversations we've had about everybody from Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder, that just 1971 and 72, when you start talking about intervisions and what's going on, and then start talking about in film in terms of cultural meaning making, Shaft, Superfly, the crafting, all of that takes place in the early 70s.
We're coming out of the Vietnam War. We got hippies and what they call hippies, white folk mad, black folk mad, but black folk and white folk coming together. You have the raging of the Black Panther Party and the food programs and the feeding, the reading, and there's community. You have groups coming together. Latin King,
Absolutely.
that was Young Lords, or and then
That's right.
the white groups as well. Like there seemed to be an understanding that we only get through this together. There seemed to be that understanding.
That's right.
I thought Elton John was black. Okay, this is how.
Well, you're not alone. Elton John thought Elton John was black. In fact, it's so funny that we talked with Keisha Lance Bottoms. We'll air the interview this week. Her new memoir is out, The Rough Side of the Mountain.
Yes,
Yeah.
I talked with her this week too.
Yeah, she said we were talking. It was great. I mean, and talking a lot about her father, who, of course, worked with Elton John, among others. So to even know that this young girl was over in London with her parents and then back in Georgia. I mean, so when you talk about Elton John, I mean, they get that right as far as I'm concerned in the latest biopic when they portray out there at the Stone Pony in California and then back in the black foundation for Elton John's music. Of course. I mean, Benny and the Jets. I mean, you listen to him. That piano is in the line of everybody from George P. Johnson and Art Tatum all the way up through Monk right onto that stage. I mean, it's not Little Richard. It's Elton John. Without us, there's no Elton John. It's no question about it.
I mean, David Bowie. I mean, we can go on and on and on, but the point is that they appreciated it. It wasn't like just Pat Boone out here. I'm gonna sing this black stuff. I'm not gonna give anybody credit. I'm gonna make all of the money. And it wasn't Pat Boone. It was, we appreciate y'all. We appreciate y'all.
That's right. Yeah, and that's in the cultural meaning making and the movement and memory, the way you even expressed it this morning or today. That is a period we like to sit with because, you know, we both, and so many of us here right now, came into our awareness. We were little in the late 60s. And then as we became aware of ourselves, it was the 70s. The 70s was the formative decade. And I think we both are eternally grateful that it was the 70s and not the 80s or the 90s or even the 60s. I think that the cultural expression and the political expression of the 1970s was purchased for us by the sacrifices of the 1950s and 60s. That was probably the most formative decade. I mean, you know, the US likes to narrate the 60s as the decade, but I think, you know, upon further reflection, it's the 70s because we were able to do something with what had been purchased, that space and time that had been purchased for us by that blood sacrifice of the 60s. That's what made, that's Toni Morrison. That's Toni Cade Bambara. You know, that's Maya Angelou, who has her roots in the 50s and 60s, but then you see that blossom because those Black institutions of the 70s are made possible by the break with the white oppression that had preceded it. And that for a brief moment in time, there was Black autonomy and semi-autonomy before the regrouping. And this is where Mary Baraka, who becomes Mary Baraka really in the 70s. Malcolm's assassinated in 65. Leroy Jones moves uptown from the Village to Harlem, and then Newark, of course, Committee for a Unified Newark, Kenneth Gibson and all that work, Kawhi the Towers. All that really is the late 60s, early 70s. And as Baraka calls it, the changing same, because these white nationalists saw what was coming. And so they got their team together, hunkered down, and came up with a game plan. And Donald Trump, as an avatar, is the result of a 60-year struggle to claw it back. I really embrace them. I love them for it, because what they can't see is that their end is here. And the seeds for that end were planted when you snatched us 500 years ago. But we're finally at the point where you don't have the muscle to stop what's coming. So the 80s, I think, was their last major platforming of their death rattle. Reagan is an avatar for something they planted when Lewis Powell wrote that Powell memorandum in 71 to say, in order for us to take back Christianity and capitalism, we're going to have to pool our resources and put a think tank together to really get this straight. That's where the Heritage Foundation comes from. And then we got to stay laser focused. Think about it. It took them 60 years. And what they have won, inherited, is a legacy of ashes. Because the Black consciousness that was planted in the 60s, that gave bloom in the 70s. Remember, this is also the decade of Fela Kuti. This is the decade of Bob Marley and reggae. So the awareness that we are beyond the four corners of this little criminal enterprise that was planted in the Black consciousness movement of the 70s is the thing that is going to kill them in the 21st century, because they never saw themselves as separate. White supremacy has always been a global project, regardless of their petty squabbles and infighting. We were the one that needed to recognize the same thing, and that we isn't just Black, but it is foundationally Black for us. So yeah, I mean, I that's why, as you say, we renegotiate the terms now. And what comes next? Whoever wins the presidential election of 2028 is going to face a very different world. The United States not running it no more. Trump has helped us. He's accelerated the inevitable. You can't run it anymore. The BRICS is not perfect. The BRICS ain't even great in some ways, but in other ways, standing up an alternate currency system, the EU, let's say Kamala Harris is president, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is president, or whoever. Let's just, whoever is president. Let's say that, for some reason the plan goes left and they can't push Alito and Thomas out of the Supreme Court in the next 2 years, so that Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson is the Chief Justice once age, and the same night that awaits us all claims those two nasty pieces of work, and another president nominates her to be the Chief Justice once Thomas decides that since he has wrecked the Supreme Court, it's time for him to go into retirement and write books about how the court needs to be reformed. Just go. Let's just say that's the case. When President Ocasio-Cortez or President Harris, whoever, lands in London and said, let's talk, the British are like, yeah, We can talk for a minute because you don't live in the same world that you lived in before Donald Trump. You're a very nice lady. We love you. It's beautiful. But at the same time, we're never going back to the way of being dictated by the United States of America. United States of America's name is mud forever.
Wow.
Now, in the EU, it's named, can't nobody trust y'all? Because if it ain't you in 5 years or 4 years or 2 years, it could be somebody. We see you now. We always say, and black people say, yeah, we were trying to tell y'all, except some of these American Negroes gonna cling to their master's ankle like somehow the United States is still running stuff. But yeah, Trump has done us a great favor. He's done us a great favor. He's accelerated the inevitable. So, it's beautiful.
Can you walk us through what your vision is for where we're going, and then what you'd like to see happen?
I think we walk each other through it. Well, what I would love to see, which is why we're starting today, and we anchored today with that little clip and that specific song. Stop. That's the first thing. Stop. Don't make it worse. Don't go any further in the direction that will lead to our mutual destruction. And we'll talk about what we means. But the love you save, stop. Because that love, first of all, it's got to be love. It can't be acrimony. It can't be hatred. It can't be at each other's throats. Stop. The love you save may be your own. It will be your own, in fact. So I thought that, we would start with that today for a couple of reasons. One, before a knife touched a face or a chemical agent was rubbed on a body, before celebrity led to the utter distortion of Africana cultural meaning making, before social structure pressures and the market anchoring those pressures led us to the past that we are now, and hitched our cultural meaning making to the plantation as firmly as we were hitched to it during our physical captivity. Before that, there was a moment, a break, where a system that we had pounded on until it broke didn't know quite what to do and how to respond. And when social structures find themselves teetering, I mean, the systems that we all live in find themselves confronted, they will, and here I borrow from Antonio Gramsci and some of the theorists who've written about this and talked about this for a century or more. Those systems will expand enough to maintain some form of power, if not control. So it's prescient that you talk, Prof, about the 1960s and 70s, because it wasn't just the United States. You talk about 1968, a very important year in the world in terms of student movements. So much has been written and discussed about the student movements, even in Europe, but certainly here in the United States, that Vietnam moment, the anti-imperialist thrusts, which is why, by the way, people do not want you educated. I'm sure everybody saw, we commented on it, but in passing, but the article and the news out of Ohio that the hillbilly horde in Ohio with what they call Senate Bill 1 has moved to eliminate nearly 90 programs in Ohio, academic programs, and those academic programs across the state of Ohio in the public institutions. Truly remarkable. The public universities, they are scheduled to eliminate, to phase out so many programs, not just Africana studies at places like Kent State University, which is in Dave Chappelle's neighborhood in Yellow Springs, Ohio, in the same neighborhood where you see Wilberforce and Central State University, right there in that neighborhood. Antioch College, where his father worked. Wright State University in nearby Dayton is eliminating its Africana Studies, its African and African American Studies program. That is the program that helped shape Kwaku Larry Crow. And that is the program at the university where there's a Black Cultural Center that was founded by Dr. Yvonne Sion, Dave Chappelle's mother, and Kwaku Larry Crow's Jegna, to use the Amharic term, or if you want to use the Greek alternative, which I really try never to use now, because I know better, mentor. But that program is being shut down at Wright State University. 14 programs are being shut down at Wright State University. And the hillbilly horde, in its utter racist fever dream insanity is also eliminating biological sciences as a major, eliminating chemistry as a major. Sure, classical languages and cultures, and I'm not saying I'm sad to see that go, because that usually means Greek. It doesn't mean Egyptian. It doesn't mean, Amharic. It doesn't mean Ge'ez, the ancient language of Ethiopia. So maybe it should be reformed anyway. It should be, but they're eliminating comparative religion, earth and environmental sciences, economics, mathematics as a major. The hillbilly horde has decided at Wright State that must go. Philosophy, not surprising, but physics, psychology. Yeah, of course, women and gender studies, because after all, what are women in gender? What are women after all in the Western worldview? Stop. The love you say may be your own. We're coming to that conversation. Education and wellness studies being eliminated. Right, state. University of Cincinnati is getting rid of music composition, and the Associate of Science and Public Health at the University of Cincinnati's Blue Ash College. After all, you don't want people coming to school to study public health. The University of Toledo is also getting rid of Africana studies. That's not a surprise. And Asian studies, not a surprise. But data analytics, disability studies, Middle East studies, not a surprise. Philosophy, religion, not a surprise. Spanish and women and gender studies, not a surprise. I mean, they are racists, and so they love that kind of thing. Shawnee State has already cut education and technical study. Then they're going to come back and get rid of social science, political science. Not a surprise, because there are a lot of us who seem to think somehow that those things are not relevant. How's it going to help me get a job? Opening our mouths and put our shrunken brains on display. But the natural sciences, the integrated sciences as well at Shawnee State University, and the flagship in the Buckeye State. I got 2 degrees from this place, though you'll never see me wear anything from it. The Ohio State University, as they say. Music theory, musicology, eliminated. Medieval and Renaissance studies, can't say I'm shedding a tear there. But the integrated major in mathematics and English, the Ohio State University.
Why, Dr. Carr, those? The others I understand. Why math and English?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I mean, if we were to examine the demographic of the people who come to universities to study in the sciences, I already know, but anybody looking for it and breaking down the applicants and then those admitted based on test scores and grades, I think that for the racists, the uncomfortable truth that an uncomfortable percentage of those students are non-white has dawned on them. The racist Ed Bloom, billionaire who funds all these affirmative action challenges, the nasty piece of work behind the Students for Fair Admissions case versus Harvard University, and the North Carolina case, now gearing up to go after the Congressional Black Caucus Scholarship Program. Ed Bloom used Asians, the broad label that will include everybody: Chinese, Indians, Vietnamese, Koreans, whoever. Use them as a stalking horse to go after Black folk and to go after others he found undesirable. But when you look at the numbers of admittees at Harvard in terms of their first year class, it's the largest group in that class are Asians. In the Buckeye State, the hillbilly horde, the very people that Dave Chappelle is trying to lay an economic floor under by allowing businesses in Yellow Springs during COVID that were going to go out of business and go bankrupt by purchasing the buildings they were in and allowing them to be there rent-free for a year or two while they got themselves into a different economic space. Those very people are represented in that very legislature in that state by hillbillies who think somehow they can stop the dawn or the coming of the rushing of the ocean or the wind blowing by somehow eliminating programs that attract, for them, probably too many non-whites.
Is it also an opportunity to get rid of professors?
Oh, sure. And that really, in terms of the, it's interesting. It's interesting you asked that, Prof, because in some ways we are, and let me say that for me as an individual, having been born and raised in this criminal enterprise and shaped to a certain sensibility, it almost seemed counterintuitive, and it is counterintuitive in some ways. People say, "Oh, you're a scholar." I say, "No, I'm not a scholar." But I know what people mean, and I know that part of that label that I embrace because I am a reader and I'm a teacher, and intermittently I'm a writer. But more importantly, I'm a reader and a listener and a teacher. Writing is very important as I move into this phase of my life. But at the same time, I guess what I'm saying is that the idea of places where people who do that as their vocation, as their avocation, as the way they move through the world, as we have done, those places have been very important and anchoring and sacred even in all human societies. The scribes of ancient Egypt, the learned people of China and India, the traditions that venerate those who spend their lives in deep contemplation and study, whether it be in what we might call a religious tradition, whether it be the monastic traditions of Ethiopia, which predate anything in Europe, or the Catholic Church. The whole idea of the sequestered, the nuns and the priests who spend their time in quiet contemplation. And out of that medieval model is born the Western concept of the university, even as what predates it in Africa and Asia have a similar investment in the learned. But what the West is in a struggle now around is the relationship between those clusters and those spaces and the vast majority of people who either are not called to that vocation or avocation, are not brought into that avocation, or who don't aspire to that, and everybody else. So getting rid of a faculty and then using the excuse that it's for economic reasons, even as thieves steal billions in other areas of activity, is an indication of a deeper and probably for the West more intractable problem, which is a problem of contempt for learning. And the irony is, for somebody like me or somebody like us who have worked in those spaces, not because we aspired to become part of those communities, but because we identify them as places that would allow us to do this all the time. The irony is that we are working in many ways to a similar outcome for different purposes. When I say jailbreak the Black university, what I am saying is we must all recognize that we all have the innate ability to think, to listen, to develop our minds, to be in dialogue, to remember. We all have that. And so week after week, day after day, hour after hour, in addition to engaging in that work, what I've always hoped to do is do what was done for me, which is two things. Number one, model what that looks like to demystify it for everyone and pass it on. So that I came to Howard University for the same reason I went to the school district of Philadelphia, to recruit. I did not come to reproduce class tensions, to say this is the only place, or this is the best place, or this is the place to which we must turn for advice and guidance. No, I went there to say, who else wants to join the work of showing each other that we all have this responsibility to do it. In Ohio and other places, these hillbillies are terrified of a future where that would be the outcome. Their rhetoric reflects that. They are so contemptuous of those who are learning, and they take pride in not knowing. If they were to stop and recognize that supporting education, public education, in all of its forms and all of its pursuits would in fact enhance society, they would still do what they are doing because they don't want society enhanced. Meanwhile, the vast majority of human beings have the ability to stop it. Stop! the love you save may be your own. In other words, stop, because you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. When your weather system collapses, because you have enough people developed who can understand what's going on. Well, I shouldn't say that, because that's not going to happen, because that comes from the warped perspective on the world that continues to think that the United States of America is somehow the only arbiter of the future in the world. The reason that the United States will never catch the Chinese now is because for decades, China has poured trillions of dollars into developing education. While the United States is cutting programs, the Chinese are turning out students, albeit in a very severe system at times, who are so capable that they are now producing automobiles for less than $20,000, fully kitted out, where you can take a 5-minute charge and go nearly 1,000 miles. Meanwhile, in the United States, programs are being cut to give people the basic math and science to have the capacity to go on for higher education and deeper education to allow them to create equally efficient automobiles. And somehow the United States thinks that's a winning strategy. They don't think it's a winning strategy. It's diseducation. And ultimately, it's being fueled by the same billionaires who are investing in these other places. So yeah, getting rid of the faculty is about, I think, that anti-intellectual, class-based in terms of the theater thrust. And finally, it's also about the war against unions. So it's all about the war against working class people and poor people, because, the teachers' unions, well, you take out the police unions, the fire unions, the white supremacist unions. The idea that organized labor is the biggest threat to capitalists isn't a theory, that's practice. And the Ohio legislature has been purchased by the rich. So these guys are doing their master's bidding. And meanwhile, most of them went to school. So yeah, Ohio State can get rid of, it's very interesting because they've gotten rid of some of the things that they were known for. Remember, Ohio State University is a land grant institution. So for them to get rid of sustainable agriculture, yeah, this is politics played at the highest level. Right down the street in Columbus at the state capitol, Ohio University got rid of African American studies, but they also got rid of chemistry. Yeah, they got rid of dance, but they got rid of geological sciences and mathematics. Yes, they got rid of music therapy, and they got rid of physics. And Kent State, now I won't name all the schools. We talk about Bowling Green State and a few others in the University of Akron, but Kent State breaks my heart in part because, again, right there in the neighborhood of Dave Chappelle, where he lives, that bachelor's of art in Africana studies is very important because there's a lot of blood on the floor that came out of that. Ed Crosby and the folks out there at Kent State, he and his wife, for decades, Linus Hoskins or Kwame Nantambu. I think about Kent State is a very important moment. Like Dave Chappelle's been saying to everybody, Michelle Martin at NPR and all the interviews he's been giving after he made it possible for the NPR station to stay down there out there in Yellow Springs. As he's been saying to everybody, these are little blue dots in the red ocean of Ohio. Kent State's another one. You ever go down to Kent State University, go to downtown Kent State and go through the little town square, the bookstores there, the live music venues, the restaurants, you wouldn't realize that you are in the stereotypical Ohio. But they're in an intellectual war. And I, for one, applaud them. Because in this changing scene, the pushback, when it comes this time, they won't be strong enough to withstand it. The only question is, how will this pushback emerge in a changed global social structure? United States ain't got that kind of muscle no more. I don't believe the reports. I don't say believe, because it is a matter of belief at this point, because it's a matter of faith. It's a matter of making speculation without evidence, which we've been doing a great deal of the last week, about Black folks in the United States of America. But I don't know what happened with General Kane and Bozo Trump and the nuclear launch codes in the last week or two. I don't know. The sources that I've read that suggest that Kane stopped Bozo from using the nuclear launch codes. There are conflicting accounts, and I haven't seen a report from a source that I would quote unquote trust yet. But I know that where there's smoke, there's fire, and I'm sure there have been where the reporting that Bozo has been kept out of certain briefings. I guess you could use the word believe. I take as credible the reporting there because it's much more varied in terms of sources, including some that are quote unquote more reputable than others. And it also tracks with the fact that Bozo was incurious, and his brain, which was never great on the best day of his life, is now virtually completely deteriorated. And his incuriosity led with his mental combined with his mental incapacity would mean that even if he were in the room, he would be looking for ways to leave the room and wander around and play with his little models of arches and ballrooms and statues. So, I mean, that really isn't much of a revelation, but what it is an indication, even as we see the Secretary of the Navy dismissed this week for not being able to build the Trump class of cruisers, if you can trust the reporting quickly enough, a man who had never served in the military, by the way. I think there's an indication that there's still some people in the military, a great number of people, probably the majority of people in one way or another, who would preclude the destruction of the species and the burning of the planet. So that's encouraging to hear. But what I'm saying is, this time when the pushback comes, and the pushback will come, it's going to come from different places than maybe even the 1960s and 70s and 80s. And I think when that pushback comes, the capacity of these white nationalists to sustain some type of suppression effort is going to fail. After all, remember, we're still in 2026. We're still in the first quarter of we just passed the first quarter of 2026. And it was only 3 or 4 or 5, 10 years ago when ICE was in the streets of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we were out. Wait, was that 3 or 4 or 10 years ago? No, that was like yesterday. And it's disappeared from the headlines, not because they have all left, but because the resistance to it forced them to regroup. So I think that resistance is yielding fruit. But, you know, today I thought we would talk a little bit about, you know, we talk about stopping, like just pausing, lowering the temperature for a moment and being thoughtful. The love we save may be our own. How do we claim community in a moment like this? In this moment of perpetual assault, perpetual noise, perpetual thought pieces and opinions on what John Bracey, my man John Bracey, an ancestor now, used to call very thin margins of knowledge. Well, I don't know, but, and then let me go off into the other way. Wait, stop. Because what is the ultimate objective? You know, how can we live together? That's the question. We open with Stop the Love You Save because, you know, there's a new Michael Jackson film out. It has been endorsed by the family. I guess Janet is not in it. And one of the children who are associated with Michael Jackson, I won't say daughter after all, said, you know, I looked at an early script and I had some notes. And then, you know, I ain't talked to me no more and I ain't talked to them. The one who calls herself Black because she said, I consider myself Black. I'm culturally Black. I'm like, God bless you, everybody, because, you know, everybody, no question. Dave Chappelle once said, you know, I'm Asian. Why? This is how I feel on the inside. Okay, no problem. Whoever you are, you didn't come at your father's loins, but that's fine. But I'm saying that movie now, clearly, you know, the critics will likely call it hagiography, you know, a made-up narrative. But what narrative is not made up? But in this moment of science and technology that enable us to see a 11 going on 12 years old Michael Jackson, as we saw him on the stage there at the Flip Wilson show or the television show, then yeah, at some point I'm sure I will watch the movie as well. But I can always watch the little boy with his brothers and his family, with his siblings and their parents. There is no perfect home. There's no perfect family. But I thought we would start there because we got a chance and get a chance to remember that we don't have to trust narratives that come in the wake of the living moments of our memory. When we have the living moments of our memory, we don't have to do that. At the center of human governance formations, the most intimate formations, who are we to each other? In a household, in a community, in a formation that is much more intimate, in a church or a mosque, or in a space where we gather, where we know everybody in that space, or we know everybody who knows everybody else in that space, in those centers, at that place, at the center of governance formations, is stories, is narratives. This is how you're related to each other. You're being brought into a space to say, this is how we know each other. This is how we are together. The farther you get away from those intimate spaces, as you knit those spaces together in larger social structures, The farther you get away from that, the more difficult it becomes to control a social structure that is based on knitting together various governance formations. Spent this entire semester, this was the last week of formal classes in Howard, and now we got the 2-week quarter that leads to the exams and grading and then graduation on the Saturday before Mother's Day. And we're in that season now of the endings of academic cycles, whether you be in the 4th grade or getting a PhD in the United States, whatever form level you're in the Caribbean or Africa, wherever you are at exam time, if you're in Vietnam or if you're in Paris, the globe in terms of formal education is moving now into that ending of the academic cycle. We have jailbroken the Black university here, which means our learning now is consistent, as regular as the drumbeat, is reliable as the sunrise. We will continue for as long as we continue in that regular space. We've jailbroken that. But in this season, as I came to close last week in terms of my introduction to African American Studies class at Howard University, we went through the entire semester in one class, and then in another class, we went through the entire semester again, two meetings this week. And I did something that I had never done in 26 years, prompted essentially by our time together here and in Knarrative in Nubia. And as a result of the last 6 years of our convenings, I wrote short essays for each of the conceptual categories and used them in my class with student feedback and workshopping to concretize a written form of how we think about these conceptual categories. And, I'll spend this summer expanding them, editing, connecting, and then by the end of this summer, as the Muslims would say, inshallah, or I know Baba Triple OGs, why y'all keep thinking, I'm just using it because of, what the hell. Say Lord willing, God willing, inshallah. If dear Orisha allow, as they whisper in the ears of all of us, including me, there'll be a book. But I'm raising that because one of the things that I was grappling with the young people is helping them understand the distinction between social structure and governance. Governance is about intimacy when it was just African people. So we're connected with each other. But then when you look at something like Egypt, which is a social structure, a knitting together of various governance formations, you're looking at a broader social structure that knits together these intimate spaces. The main thing that happened as we were being trafficked was we were pulled into a global, emerging global structure, as Howard French writes about in Born in Blackness, that did not see us as humans and didn't treat us as humans, didn't treat us as beings, treated us as commodities. And we got sucked into a global social structure that was emerging, that is now on the verge of, if not complete collapse, certainly a reformation and a receding in power and authority. We got pulled in that, but it was our governance formations that we brought with us into that horror, into that trauma, that have sustained us. The love, the ways of knowing that saw community before any individual desire. The love that was in many ways required of us to survive, that found its way into our ways of knowing that we generated as we found ourselves in these spaces, this recognition of spirit that we gave labels to, like Vodun and Santeria and Macumba and Candomblé and the holiness and the gospel, all of that. Those ways of knowing saved us. The love we saved was our own. And so as we think about this, at the center of governance formations and the social structures they impact are stories, are narratives. So I can watch a Michael Jackson movie, or I can watch a 2-minute performance of Stop the Love You Save May Be Your Own on a show headed and fronted by a Black man, and watch those young people and feel the thing that we felt when we were that age, or if we weren't alive at that time, get a sense of what's radiating out of that honest joy performance. Almost 60 years, over 50 years before another story is told, starring a boy whose father was his age when he's sitting or moving around on stage with his uncle. So What do we believe about each other? What are our objectives about each other? What do we believe about ourselves in relations with others in this governance formation? How do we treat each other? How we treat each other says a great deal about how we imagine ourselves in the world during this brief time we're alive on the planet. How we behave as individuals and collectively determines the quality of our lives and the quality of the places we call home. So it seems to me now is a time for us, at least for a moment, to just take a beat. The power of the pause. How many times have we talked about that? We had a whole session on that. How many times? Stop. The love you save may be your own. How can we live together? So we opened with that. This week's conversation, we want to talk about a few things. Violence. We have to talk about it because we've never been without violence in human history. And we've certainly never been without concentrated violence coming out of a particular form, a racialized form, in the last 500 years. And we certainly have not ever pushed back against violence individually without seeing that our most effective way to push back against violence is community, not individuals. And the stories we tell ourselves, the way we narrate the nature of violence and community goes a long way toward helping us confront these very human problems, which seem intractable. But ultimately, the most powerful way to do it is community, and the most powerful way in community to do it is continuity. How do we solve or resolve questions of violence? How do we do it in Black life? You're not going to get there. I'm not going to get there without love. And I'm not talking about romantic love. You know, Dr. King does us the favor, as in his writings, of distinguishing between the various versions of love, but he's sourcing the Greeks. I respect that. I understand his diseducation. It's like mine. But I understand what's underneath that diseducation is something very African, and that concept of love, I much more prefer the question of love as it is framed by the Egyptians, by the ancient Egyptians, in the word mer. M-E-R is how we would spell it, but the glyph of a backhoe. To love means literally to exert oneself on someone else's behalf, to labor, to work on someone's. It's not the fluttering you feel when you see somebody's eyes batting, or you like the curve of their cheek or their leg. No, it is the sense of devotion to others. It's a very important concept, and it's one that we have never not been with. It has been the thing that has sustained us. The love we have saved, our love, it isn't exclusive to African people, but it is the foundation of human existence. It is the thing that has propelled us, not the great violences of empire or the intimate violences of partner violence. So I thought this week we could examine violence and narrative and community and continuity in African life. You know, this weekend marks the anniversaries of the birth of two institutions. One, the United Nations, another, the United Negro College Fund. Remember the motto of the UNCF, founded on the 25th of April. Ella Fitzgerald's birthday, by the way, the sweetest voice ever. I know everybody has their favorites. I do too. I love Ella Fitzgerald. I love Sarah Vaughan. I love them all. But, you know, Ella right here with us in this Karen Hunter birthday weekend, Greg Carr birthday weekend too, which only means that we give love to our parents, two people who decided to come together and be the conduit through which a third person comes. Understanding, as Khalil Gibran might say, you know, your children are not your children. Human beings are pass-throughs. So what I would normally do on the day that I came out of my mother's womb, on the evening of April 27, 1965 at Vanderbilt University Hospital, what I would normally do is wait until around 6 o'clock in the evening Central Standard Time and call my parents. I can't do that anymore physically, and I can do that all the time, and do it all the time spiritually, as they sit over there on that altar. So it's a beautiful thing to understand that we don't mark birthdays, as African people have come up with the concept with the phrase born days. This day we were born, but it was the day my mama gave birth. And it's, you know, it somewhere around the neighborhood of 9 months after she and my father decided to work it out between them, as August Wilson put in the mouth of the character Rose in the character Troy as he was talking with Rose in the play Fences. Your mom and I worked that out between us. So that happened 9 months before the day I came out of my mama's womb. And she gave birth to me in an act of mirror, an act of love, rendering unnecessary the phrase labor of love. Love mean labor. When you're in labor, you're in love. Who would choose that? As a male, I would never know that feeling, that pain, that labor of love, as it is called in English, or that mirror, one word in the Kemetic, in the ancient Egyptian. You're going to stop clowning Egyptian language. We don't do it in Narrative and Nubia because we got Mario Beatty, and now we have each other as people are learning Middle Egyptian and Coptic. But in the greater world around us, we have literally been socialized to hate ourselves by making fun of the study of ancient Africa. I'll come back to that in a minute and talking about ASCAC. But again, by centering introspection and dialogue, so the stopping isn't complete silence. Now it's like, whoa, let's listen with each other. By doing that, we challenge ourselves to rethink what we're saying, the speech, rethink how we are, rethink the power of mediation and collective healing. This world is fractured. Man, it's broken. I'm going to go see that Michael Jackson movie, but I'm not expecting anything out of it. I'd much rather watch 2 minutes of them singing. I mean, you better stop. The love you say may be your own. Darling, take it slow, or someday you'll be all alone. You better stop. The love you say may. Them little afros bopping, and this little boy, 11 years old, going on 12, talking about stop the love you say may be your own. Oh, darling, take it slow, or one day you'll be all alone. What? Takes a different meaning this week, doesn't it? The hell would drive somebody to take a gun and kill his wife, kill himself? You better stop. The love you save may be your own. We don't know any more than we know what happened on Jackson Street in Gary, Indiana. But we do know this. There are many things in this world that are irrevocable. That once they are done, cannot be undone, cannot be remedied, cannot be repaired, cannot be. You better stop. The love you save may be your own. Oh my goodness, we are in this season. A lot of April babies. April the 1st, Girl Scout Heron. You come on through, you get Paul Robeson on the 9th, Billie Holiday right there behind him, all the way through. It's every day. Everybody is born every day. Everybody makes transition every day. So, I mean, but in this season, and when we think about the days we are born, I would say stop and look around and see who else came onto the planet when you came onto the planet. When we Abu Jamal, as I say, on Karen Hunter's birthday, also David Blackwell, the great scientists, without which we might not have a lot of this technology we're using really to this moment. Ella Fitzgerald birthday today. Hubert Henry Harrison on the 27th. If you go back and look at In Class Session 59, the title of that week was The Truth About the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We were talking about that. Remember that old movie from 30 years ago? Wait, no. Session 59. We just about just a little past a year old in our weekly conversations. We talked about Hubert Harrison, the brilliant writer and thinker. If you go back and look at that session, that's before Brother Brian Quoba's book on Hubert Harrison came out, but not before the 2-volume masterpiece by Jeffrey Babcock Perry. And more importantly than all those books, the massive volumes of writings by Hubert Harrison. Go look up Hubert Harrison. Brilliant brother. And then we revisited him a little over a year later in session 134. There we talked about Pastime Paradise, Stevie Wonder, Gangster Paradise, Coolio remixing it, Kwame Alexander, our brother, and the film and the poem that inspired the title of the film for the Baraka family, Why Is We Americans? That was session 134. Hubert Harrison, born the 27th of April. Also, of course, Coretta Scott King. We'll talk more about her in a moment. Coretta Scott King, who went to school at Antioch College, where Dave Chappelle's father taught school, which is why he was in Ohio in the first place between his mother and father. Of course, his mother Dr. Sion ends up in Dayton, of course, at Wright State, where they cut in the African and African American Studies program. I mean, these are things. We have open enemies in this world, open enemies in this country. And there's no need for us to take out a weapon and harm them or harm ourselves, because it will be the love that keeps us out of the abyss. And who knows, as they were moving between Atlanta, where his father was teaching in the AUC, to Washington, D.C., where Dr. Sion, who had traveled the world, worked with everybody from Patrice Lumumba to Marion Barry and everybody else, to Ohio. Who knew with all that was going on that they would produce, because of what they worked out between them in a moment of love, and for Dr. Sion, labor as love, a son who would develop a capacity to attract enough capital, meaning money, to do something for people, some of whom would vote against their interests and his. This is how it works. This is how humanity and life works. So Coretta Scott King, who went to school out there. In fact, I have a signed copy of the memoir of her music teacher. I don't know if I have it in here. Sometimes I keep those books in here. Sometimes I put them in storage. I don't see it. I don't remember what I did with it. Anyway, and I bought that book in the very town square that has some of those businesses that Dave Chappelle saved. When I was on my way back here from being out there with Kwaku Larry Crow and Olabisi Olakalade at the Martin Delaney Memorial at the National African American Historical and Cultural Center, which has also seen staff cuts because of the hillbilly horde in Columbus, Ohio. So very important for us to raise that. Those people have been great hosts and in very loving community building efforts have created space for us every year. And we'll be back out there in June, 4th and 5th, or the 5th and 6th, whatever that first weekend in June is, we'll be there. But they can't do everything that they were able to do all these years that we've been going out there, in part because the hillbilly horde has tried to destroy them. We will break your backs, hillbilly horde. Your backs, your political backs will be ground to dust. You're accelerating the confrontation, and I, for one, am not sad about that. But I'm just connecting a few of those dots as we continue along, because what I'm saying is that there's always underneath the noise a form of stillness and community, a form of stopping and considering that sustains that love that will keep us out of the abyss. And I just thought about it because Coretta Scott King, of course, born on the 27th of April as well, went to school out there in Ohio after she left Marion, Alabama. Okay, and then ends up in Boston, which is where she meets her life partner, Martin King. And that those places that she walked are still there. So we'll talk about that. Like I said, the United Nations founded as well this weekend. Thanks to everybody who came out to the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations this past weekend, the ASCAC conference. We learned a lot about hybrid conferences. We've been having them now for some time through the regions of ASCAC, but we've entered a new era. There were no platforms like this when we got shut down by COVID. Now that we're back physically, there will never not be digital platforms again. So, very successful conference. I hope my brother will get some rest, Mario Beatty, our president. He's not, though, because he's preparing, because as we said at the physical conference, the next phase, which we worked through it and decided a few weeks ago that all of the digital presentations that we were going to have, the virtual presentations for people to zoom in and present, we'll move those off. So we did all the in-person presentations from Thursday night, and we were at Sankofa for how to build a library. Brilliant, beautiful conversation we were having there. Thanks to Brother Muisa Muntali, who put that together for us, got that film for us, as I talked about last weekend. Professor James Pope, who came in and helped lead the conversation there, and everybody who came from that Thursday all the way up through Sunday, last Sunday's business meeting, when we came together, made some other decisions as an association. It's beautiful to see everybody in person. And that having been said, now we move into the next phase of our national convening. The second week in May will be the virtual part. That's when I will give the full presentation, the full conversation that that I was going to give at the end of the conference. Usually I'm put right there at the end on Saturday to kind of help do a summary of everything, talk, as Jacob Corrales used to talk about the state of the war we're in. And as Asa Hilliard used to do, kind of highlight things going on around the world and around the country where people are doing this work. I take that as a very serious responsibility, a sacred mission, to use the words of Leonard Jeffries, but I didn't give that full presentation in person on Saturday because I really wanted the time to go to our elder, 90-year-old Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, life partner of Leonard Jeffries. Baba Lynn, we continue to send you our best and our love. Look forward to see you. I'll be up in Newark, I think the second week in May, with the good brother Akil Kalfani, celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Africana Center at Essex County College. But hoping to get a chance to go by and see Baba Lynn at some point during that time I'm up there. But Dr. Rosalind, still swinging with both fists, mind sharp as a razor. She and I were presenting at the same closing session, and we let her go first. I was supposed to go before her, but I said, no, I don't want to do that. She should go. So, Mario and I sat there and said, okay, let's do this. Let's put her first and let her talk for as long as she wants. And because listen, Rosalind Jeffries came down from Jersey, 90 years old, and you are an elder, you speak. And you speak till you decide you don't want to speak. And so I gave maybe about 10 to 15 minutes of remarks, but I'll do the full thing on the digital thing. Stay tuned. We'll tell you about that. But again, a lot of lessons we learn. Clear study and analysis. That's at the core of the ASCAT work, of our association's work. And then to spread that, when we get together physically, we find our people, as Nzinga Radabisha Heru always would say, may you find your family in a peaceful place. That has an added resonance in this terrible time we have lived through over the last week. So let's do a quick tour around the week. I'm an eye on the clock here just so we can be clear, because today is also Independent Bookstore Day. So if you're in a city or a town or a country somewhere, and wherever you are, and there's an independent bookstore you can go support, go sit with them. I'll go through Sankofa at some point today and hit a couple of other independent bookstores here in the District of Columbia. Sankofa has been pumping out programs like nobody's business. So if if you need to know where there is an independent Black bookstore, go to Knarrative.com, Knarrative.com, and search, because we got hundreds of them listed there for your convenience. If you're in the United States of America, find the one closest to you and give them $3. Give them $35. Give them $3,500 if you got it, or $350 if you got it. Give them $35 if you got it. Give them something, even if it's $1 in the tip jar. Say, chin up and fight on. But today is Independent Black Bookstore Day, so Independent Bookstore Period Day. So you do that. And as I said, the 81st anniversary of the United Nations, the status and future of the UN seems secure. I look forward to the day when New York may still have an outpost of the UN, but they're going to shift the operations somewhere else outside of the United States of America. It's important. If you're going to have the United Nations, it probably needs to be somewhere else as the core of it. It continues at the UN, attempts to convene in the middle of these dying empires. We spent some time last Monday in office hours looking at some of the things that the United Nations does. We looked at UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, which has now published the last 3 volumes in the General History of Africa, bringing us up with volume 11 to the living now. And a curriculum guide, a companion guide, all of it free. Go to the United Nations website, look for UNESCO, and look for the GHA, the General History of Africa, and you can literally download volume 9, 10, and 11 for free, and the curriculum guide. So when people say, we need a book list, we need curriculum, hey, it's there. The question is, are you going to labor to use it? Stop. The love, the merit, the labor you save may be your own. It isn't just people, as you say about Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, you say about this about Dr. Ben. He said, yeah, buy Dr. Ben's books and use them for furniture. I think one of the reasons why, as people tune in last week, if you didn't see the conversation we had last week, where I was literally at Dr. Courtney Wilkinson's building, our sister, Mama Courtney's building down the street here, literally at Theodore Roosevelt High School. And the number of people who come in on a weekly basis, I think there might be a correlation between people being able to see these books behind me and how many people decide to come in. They come in and say, oh, ain't no books there. I'm like, what is going on? We're using books as furniture now? And by the way, shout out to my man Bruce Jenkins and to the principal of Calvin Coolidge High School, because I was at Roosevelt all weekend, and then Monday went over to Coolidge with Deputy Superintendent of Prince George's County Public Schools. Brother came up, the Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer of Denmark Technical College in South Carolina. A great conversation we had with young women and men from Calvin Coolidge High School and Ida Bell Wells Middle School about the nature of learning and how to go about doing the work of really studying and making life-changing decisions in a moment. Very, 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 very happy to be in those schools, and also shout out to my man Baba Shechem, which is a title, an honorific, if you know a Sarset Society, because around the corner from Coolidge and Ida B. Wells is the Seneb Cafe. Stood there and talked to him a long time, 1978. There's that 70s again, graduate of Howard University, there in the middle of the Black Power era, a long time operator of the Seneb Cafe, which is one of the many institutions brought into existence by the Asar Set Foundation before I went back over to Coolidge. So it's important to be in community in these places. And so the United Nations, we were talking about the General History of Africa on Monday night because it's available. So the work is not just collecting stuff. The work is to use the stuff. Stop that love. That love is not just how you feel here. It's how you behave out of your mind, your spirit, your heart, your Ib, I-B, as the Egyptians would call it, the heart and the mind. One thing, the Ib. So to love something isn't just to feel it in your heart, as the songwriters might write. It is to hear it and experience it in your mind, which is all one thing, and then to act accordingly, to do, to labor. Community and solidarity survive any violences committed at scale. This is one thing you hear when you're reading the UN reports. If you get the chance to go to the UN, I encourage everyone to do that. Reba Kelsey and myself, last time I was there, I was with Reba, and we went up there to the UN and just wandered around, listening to the conversation, sat in, listening, going around, listening to the ear hustling in the cafe, in the bookstore. And what you hear is people trying to solve problems of human existence. And when you look at the long-standing social structures, whether it be the Egyptian structures, whether it be the Chinese structures, there are significant periods of instability, social structure disruption. You're seeing it here in the United States. You see it in every empire as they come to an end. Rome, you name it. Azteca, you name it. Mali, you name it. As those disruptions and those tensions occur at that macro level in the social structure, do you know what keep the people safe? It's the intimate conversations. It's the intimate connections. It's the governance formations, the nature. That's the nature of governance and social structures. As I was writing for these Howard students, and ultimately for everybody, as I'm explaining why we have to have this Africana Studies framework. Well, I don't have to say, we don't have to have this one I did. We have to have a framework, and I'm offering this one as one potential one, because we, in terms of an academic discipline, we never really did that in Africana Studies, even though we talked about it and offered a lot of stuff. I'm trying to pull some of it together simply because it troubles my spirit and my mind that we have somehow lost the plot in that, lost the narrative in that. But anyway, as I was saying, governance is the intimate relationships. Social structure is the broader relationships. And in moments of social structure instability, I was listening to a scholar out of China talking about this a couple of weeks ago. He said, China, 4,000 plus unbroken years of continuity in terms of the concept of China, with all of its diversity in China. What has kept it out of the abyss in moments when there was no central leadership? He said it was the cultures of the people at the most intimate level. And the light went on. I made a note of it. Let me add this to the narrative, because that is what happens in all human societies. Governance formations, the most intimate relationships, when they fighting at the broad level, it is the families and communities that sustain themselves. We've seen that every time. 1992, LA's on fire. The neighborhoods band together. 1967 and 68, when Newark and Detroit now is on fire, it's the neighborhoods that bond together. It is the governance, the intimate relationships that bond together. The difference between now and all of those times before is that the science and technology is created the possibility of us knitting these governance formations together beyond the capacity of the social structures to narrate. We don't have to look to the education system in any society to give us what we are supposed to imagine as our connection to each other. That's why every time somebody says the American people, I just laugh. Who the hell is that? Because I have nothing in common other than I was trafficked into this criminal enterprise with them hillbillies in Columbus, Ohio, trying to attack the schools. And I have everything in common with everybody who shares the common commitment to our common humanity to allow us to communicate with each other without their permission and beyond their control to build the world we want to build. What has changed is the technology allows us to connect to each other. Now, what we do with that will demonstrate the love. Because for the last week, unfortunately, what I've seen too much of is it's almost like somebody hit a starter and we are now attacking each other with jackhammers in social space, media spaces. It's like, what the hell is this? I know what it is. Of course it is. We'll come to it here in a minute. But when you have moments of instability, what will keep us out of the abyss is our relationships with each other, not individual withdrawal, regardless of how we navigate it. A theme in terms of social structure as we continue through our Africana Studies framework that we will have through the end of this year, and apparently there's something going on next week. The DC History Conference is taking place at the Martin Luther King Library, and the theme this year is the semi-quincentennial. So if I'm able, I'm going to try to make it down there. There's a couple of authors that I want to see. I've read their books, and I want to see them talk about the meaning of the semi-quincentennial. You know, just and maybe next week I made a note. I'm making a note to myself that next week, I think it's the week next Saturday, Friday and Saturday. I'll talk about it here in session 321. But I'm bringing it up because one of the themes we started in January, going to continue through, that we really elevated. If you go back and look at the 4 sessions we have during February, during Blackest History Month, semi-quincentennial wars are getting closer. Because remember, the apex of it's going to be in July. That's not going to be here in DC, where Bozo and his friends are going to be down there with what's left of the White House having wrestling matches. I just really hope Mark Wayne Mullen, the new Department of Homeland Security head, will take his shirt off and maybe wear some jeans and some combat boots and get into a wrestling match with Bobby Kennedy Jr. I think we deserve the spectacle, don't we? We've been through so much this year. That kind of hilarity, I think we've earned it. You won't be able to laugh tonight if you're going to torture yourself and watch the White House correspondence dinner, the so-called nerd prom, and watch these supplicants sit as if they're somehow in a scene from the Hunger Games at the capital city and watch their Lord and Master defecate on them. That is if he comes. Apparently he went to Florida or somewhere. He out of town right now. I guess he'll come back because he's bringing his little clown car cabinet up in there, what's left of it. Sorry, Secretary of Labor, you missed it by that much. But at any rate, that's not going to bring laughter. Bobby Kennedy Jr. versus Mark Wayne Mullen on July 4th on a wrestling platform built for that purpose on the White House. I would laugh like hell at that. I hope they do it. But understand, that ain't going to be the center of the semi-quincentennial war. The war that is heating up in this country over the nature of the 250th anniversary, I'm loving it. I'm looking over here at the American Enterprise Institute's 6 volumes on it. I showed y'all that a couple of months ago. Capitalism, slavery, all this stuff. The Heritage Foundation, I'm sure, got something they cooking and brewing. But most importantly, we understand that as this empire tears itself apart, we've got narratives that we must unearth and talk about. This week, the Interior Secretary, the slick back here, Doug Burnham, still smarting from the fact that every panel, every piece of the stuff that you tried to take out of the president's house and off of the walls in downtown Philadelphia is now back up. He now saying Teddy Roosevelt should be in the College Football Hall of Fame because he the one suggested the network that became the NC2A. Whatever, man. Nobody care about that. Howard Lutnick up here lying before Congress this week saying that, his family's not profiting from the tariff refunds. When Fortune magazine published a whole ass article on all the people who bought up foreign commitments, foreign companies' purchases on tariff, so that the foreign company sold it to Lutnick's son and others, his company, so that if there was going to be a tariff refund, Lutnick's son and them would collect after having purchased the debt from foreign companies for pennies on the dollar. And here that porcelain-fronted bozo is sitting up there in Congress with them fake porcelain teeth in his mouth and them little lips saying his slick back hair. Just like he lied and say he don't know Jeffrey Epstein like that, even though his house is literally abutting Epstein's house in Manhattan. He sat up and said, "No, I am not profiting off any of this. They're not profiting on it." It's coming apart. The FT's big read yesterday, Financial Times. I mentioned this on the radio yesterday, that I might mention it today, and here it is. This is the big read. Bozo, his physical presence mirroring his mental. He's deteriorating before our eyes. Trump and the remaking of the U.S. media order. And here are some of, here's Candy Owens over there right there. And then here's Laura Loomer, who I'm sure will be resplendent in plastic resplendence at the dinner tonight. And all these people, basically, this article, I'll read you the headline. Presidents once railed against the fake news from the outside. Today, the old hierarchy of newspapers and broadcasters has fractured into a system that bears his imprint. And it goes on to talk about how they're trying to purchase all the media stuff and, TikTok, they were able to strong arm that into the Ellison's clutches and all that. And then, of course, the Paramount merger with Warner and all that. But the point is this, we're beyond that. You heard Prof say it at the beginning a few minutes ago. We are beyond. We're at a moment now where we can dictate the terms of how we connect with each other beyond their capacity to somehow create narratives that we all buy into. Yeah, there's a Michael Jackson movie, but more importantly, there's our capacity to remember the times we saw the Jacksons and everybody else perform. Beyond that is our capacity to communicate with each other, at least at this moment. Now, the Ellisons now got, TikTok, they got a majority stake and they're moving it around. But let's be clear. There are other technological platforms that are being created and have been created all over the world. And now is Claude going to, subsume ChatGPT? What's the AI war? Trump and not Trump, Musk, trying to consolidate by we in bed and battling open AI, and here's Amazon. Oh yeah. But guess what? Human beings got brains. China, Russia, Brazil, Nigeria. You got people developing things every day. Our capacity for being in contact and connection with each other is beyond their capacity to control. And the Bubblehead twins, I'm sure, will be there at their little party tonight. They're all coming from the clown car, that nasty piece of work, Russell Vogt, and his Bubblehead twin friend, Brendan Carr, at the FCC. Y'all can't control it. And in a minute, we're going to break your political back. But in the interim, we have the capacity and we have the responsibility to connect with each other in love, including critical love. I'm getting there. We come into the governance category in a moment. So let's look at the governance category as we begin to go into our second of our 6 conceptual categories in our Africana Studies framework. As I said, the 82nd anniversary of the founding of the United Negro College Fund is this weekend. And if you read Frederick Patterson's memoir, Chronicles of Faith, he was the first president of the UNCF for the private historically Black colleges and universities in the United States. You can read Mary Beth Gassman's history of it as well, which is a nice summary of some of the fact and detail, but I prefer Frederick Patterson because Patterson was the African at the heart of the beginning of the enterprise. 35 years old when he took over as president of Tuskegee University in the wake of the founder, Booker Washington, in the wake of the second to come into that seat, the great Robert Russa Moton. These were master fundraisers who were achieving and working their magic in the age of white benevolence and white philanthropy. But that money started to dry up by the time Frederick Patterson and them got together and said in 1944, we need to band together as private HBCUs because this white money is drying up. These philanthropists are moving on to other things. The Rockefeller Foundation, the Phelps Stokes Foundation, the Ford Foundation. They're now looking at other things because, mad scientists, white inventors, and white billionaires and trillionaires have their own pet projects. You see. Oh, I like that. Slow down. So much. Said the bubblehead ball. It's a lot of bubbleheads going to be there. So I'm looking at the Mbongi in Nubia. So the UNCF is created in a way primarily to band together the private HBCUs in the United States of America to pool their capacity to fundraise. Frederick Patterson was more of an academic. He's really an academic. He wasn't a fundraiser as such. But in subsequent iterations and subsequent years of the UNCF, a very successful entity. At the time, Michael Jackson and his brothers are on the Flip Wilson show in 1971 and 72. You see the UNCF debut its new motto, which becomes the phrase that we all know: a mind is a terrible thing to waste. If you bought or subscribed to Jet or Ebony during that period of the 70s, you saw that ad everywhere. Mind's a terrible thing to waste. The UNCF was founded on this weekend 82 years ago. And in that founding, the year before the United Nations was founded, the UNCF says in a governance formation move, we got to band together to get this money. But it goes through ups and downs. In Gassman's book, she writes, for example, and Patterson talks about this as well, that Black Power era of the 1960s, the one that laid a foundation for the 1970s. And at that time, the president of the UNCF was a scholar who had been the president of Fisk University named Stephen Wright. And Wright has written a couple of important books. I usually keep one of Wright's books in here, on the crisis of the African intellectual. And, this is like 0.00001% of my library. Most of it's in storage, and then there's a lot more than this around here, but I always usually keep it here. Anyway, Wright, intellectual. Wright got pushed out by the white philanthropists and the white business people, in part because he was like, there must be Black control. So they get rid of Wright, and the president who comes in after him is Vernon Jordan. Vernon Jordan comes in talking tough about Black self-determination, that these institutions are Black and the Black conscious movement means something. And I give full credit to Vernon Jordan for doing that, understanding also that Vernon Jordan is a very complicated figure in our genealogy. Talking real Black, 10 toes down for Black people, but navigating with a U.S. capitalism and the neoliberal, what emerges as a neoliberal sensibility that preserves Blackness, but preserves it in a way that I think probably does more for the Black so-called upper class than it does for anybody else. But I'm mentioning it because this speaks on the anniversary weekend of the United Negro College Fund. Shout out to my man Walter Kimbrough, my man Jelani Favors, who are down there now doing the research arm, the Frederick Patterson Institute. That's Jelani's portfolio. And beyond him, of course, at the senior vice president level is our good brother, Walter Kimbrough, former president of Dillard University, always fighting for Black institutions. And of course, Walter Lomax and those who run UNCF between here in DC and Atlanta. It's a moment for us to reflect on the nature of Black institutions that were put in place and that were created to serve all of us, and how over the arc of the time since their beginning to now, those class tensions that we find ourselves buffeted by can create distance between the very institutions that were founded on our behalf and or with us in mind, run by us, created by us, and the vast majority of us. When we talk about a we in this context, and we talking about the love we say may be our own, we've got to recognize that we is not natural. It was a imposed we in terms of a race. Y'all all Black, y'all all niggas, y'all all Negroes, you're all cappers, y'all guineas, whatever label that was imposed on us by racists inventing a world system anchored in racial capitalism. There's a difference then between that and then coming to each other and saying, not only is a form of resisting that oppression, but generating a kind of love-centered, effort-centered, labor-centered relationship at a governance level. There's a difference between those two things. And this is the season when people are getting ready, all you high school seniors, all you fourth form seniors, or all you folks getting ready to apply for and try to get into college. You're getting your letters of acceptance. You're getting your letters of wait list. You're getting your letters of rejection if you're going off to law school or medical school or dental school. And some of you are looking for ways to now rethink your next step. Well, I'm telling you, our community is here. And without community, you may find yourself getting bad advice. Thank God I had Black counselors at Hillsborough High School in Nashville, Tennessee. Because when the white teachers and white counselors were like, oh, you're smart. You can go to a white school. And I was like, I want to be in the band. I want to play in the band. And I had Black counselors like, yeah, I went to Tennessee State, or I went to Fisk, or I went to Alabama A&M. Yeah. If you're listening right now, you've never been on a historically Black college campus and you have no shot at going in the next month or two, and you're applying for school, or you've applied to school, or you're adding a school to your application list because your dream school you didn't get in, go look at them HBCUs again. Come on in with us. Come on into Nubia on Monday night, or any day for that matter. We got people here who are guidance counselors. We got folks here who are teachers. We got folks who raise money for HBCUs. We can help you. We can absolutely help you. Talking with Keisha Lance Bottoms after reading her book, and I asked her about that. I said, I started the interview with, tell me about the sister who came and sat with you when you were in your mama's hair shop, your mama's beauty shop, and she sat in the chair and she worked at Florida A&M. How you end up at FAM. And she laughed and she said, I'm gonna tell y'all that story. So she told us about that story. She said she was headed to Hampton because her girl was at Hampton, her friend. But by the time this sister got through with her, she said, I'm going to FAM. And she ended up at FAM, made all the difference. Sometimes it's a conversation. If you're listening now and you don't have nobody in that valence that can help you, guess what? Yes, you do. We're here. All of us are here. The technology makes it possible for us to build this community. And we love you. If we don't know your name yet, that don't mean we don't love you. That means that the love now must have a face and a life and an arc connected to it. That's what the labor is for. So, we ring the bell for the family of Congressman David Scott, made transition at 80 years old, had not been in the best health, to his wife, to his family. His wife, of course, is the Hammer's youngest sister, Henry Aaron's youngest sister. We give you all of that. We talked this week with good brother Robert Jemison, a reporter for the New York Times, who covers politics. And he wrote a front page article on the advanced age of so many members of Congress, but particularly the Black members of Congress, and how that is a challenge to younger generations and how that is navigated. And he also wrote the front page article on the death of Congressman Scott. I don't think I have that here, but in talking with him, I wanted to ask him specifically about, no, I don't have it here, the article he wrote on Black leadership and advanced age, which was also on the front page at the time, the Al Greens, the Benny Thompsons, the Jim Clyburns, and Maxine Waters, and so forth. And so we got into a complicated conversation about it on the air, on Sirius yesterday, on Friday, a little bit of one. He'll come back, invited him back, want to have an ongoing relationship with this brother. But we have to understand that in our communities, we got to balance respect and deference to wisdom and insight with questions of intergenerational renewal of these long distance objectives. We've created a role, for example, in ASCAC in the association called the SIMSU. A debatee gives us that word. SIMSU are the elders. So if you've been in an appointed or an elected position in ASCAC in the association, and now we're transitioning into another person or people to manage their role, we don't get rid of you. You are a SIMSU. We have a council of elders. We have a SIMSU, which means we're gonna, have a space for you to say whatever you want and say whatever you need to say and help direct us as we continue. Now, how does that work in electoral politics? That's going to have to work very differently because you got to pull a lever for one of the people. And it becomes very important to understand relationships in our communities, because without understanding relationships, the tensions that emerge will lead us into a ditch. Stop. The love you say may be your own. It was just a little over a week ago that Dr. Fairfax lost her life at the hands of her husband. And since then, so much has been said. And, I shouldn't, let me strike that. Absolutely should. But the toll it takes when we are listening to each other in pain. The love is there, I have to believe, and I have to acknowledge, because we wouldn't be talking to each other the way we talk about each other if we didn't have expectations of each other that are grounded in love. Because if we didn't care, we wouldn't be talking with each other. But the things we're saying, listen, I don't talk in terms, I don't personally, whatever, people do what they do, but femicide, androcide, which would be the systematic killing of women or men, the systematic killing of women or girls, which is a deep problem in our society. And I don't mean in the social structure, because that is a huge problem as well. That's the family of Sandra Bland or Breonna Taylor. But I'm talking about the intimate governance formations of African people. The problems that we have, how we name those problems shapes how we speak with and talk with and listen to and with each other. How does community healing take place? Femicide, the killing of women or girls, systematically. Systems. Androcide, the killing of boys or men, systematically. Those are not co-equal, not in a patriarchy. Has patriarchy existed since the beginning of the species? Absolutely, and absolutely not. Because to take that word and backmap it in history, as Dr. Bleakley Watkins constantly says, is to take feminism and backmap it into history. And I'm telling you, narratives matter. Stop. The love you say may be your own. I ain't talking about love, I'm talking about mirror. I'm talking about laboring in a certain space. What does it mean to harm one another? What is the nature of violence as it expresses itself in gendered ways, in class ways, in clashes between groups that have been narrated to be at each other's throats or that have been narrated to be one group, thereby covering over the distinctions? This is complicated stuff. I don't have an answer, but I absolutely do have an answer. The answer is that we have to always center. Well, we don't have to do anything, stay black and die. That's what people used to say, right? No, what we would be best served by doing, it seems to me, is to listen in that form of love that requires work and labor. I don't dodge anything. I have those scars to bear it. Thursday night on Roland Martin Unfiltered, being, my regular, usually Thursday nights, usually when I'm on the response panel, what's going on, Sister Tiffany Cross, who's got a book coming out, by the way, and as she was writing it, I was reading drafts as she was going back and forth, centered in women of African descent. It's called Love, Me. Love Me. But, you can imagine the variations on that, the wordplay. And some very interesting stuff she's writing about in there. But she was sitting in Happy Anniversary, Roland and Jackie Martin. They were on vacation doing their thing. And she had a couple of sisters on to talk about this question of healing and community. I know next Tuesday, I think it is, Iyanla Van Zant's going to come on Roland's show and do maybe 2 hours. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think they're still working it out on how they're going to grapple with this. But I know Roland jumped out there the night the thing happened, which we talked about a little bit. I didn't say a lot about it on last week when we were all together here. And I'm not going to say a lot about it right now. I'm just bringing it up because I only met Dr. Fairfax a couple of times, and Serena Fairfax, and I knew Justin Fairfax, and the pain that their family is in is, I think it requires all of us who are not those two people to ask ourselves, as we are immersed in this moment involuntarily, to ask ourselves, what do we hope to accomplish? Maybe even before that, who are we to each other? It's a governance question. People talking about generational curses. And when did these generational curses start? They started when we got trafficked. We had problems as human beings getting put on those boats, in part because we were put on these boats by other people who looked like us, in service of people who didn't, who had a plan for all of us that none of us saw. We just finished reading Howard French's book on that. One nice little summary of a lot of other thinking about this that has been done by people who thought about this a long time. But the trafficking of Africans and the wake, to borrow from Saidiya Hartman or whoever else you want to write about in terms of that, they're not theoretical interventions for us, but they're attempts to give language to the effects of this endless, asymmetrical war against African life. Some of the war has been incredibly successful. We become blackface versions of Europeans in terms of Eurocentric thinking. I don't know how to narrate. I don't know if there's one way to narrate, but I'm absolutely convinced and sure after decades of listening and thinking and reading and being in community that one of the ways that is the least useful is to borrow the language of people who have never culturally shown that they were anything other than at each other's throats, who would shrink love to affection, who would shrink love to lust and desire, who would then treat the union of two individuals as not as the union of communities and families, but as a transaction between two people trying to make sure that neither one of them loses their shirt to the other. I'm saying that how we talk about it shapes how we think about it. What does community healing look like? The key is to listen with each other. Maybe we can listen out of generosity. Maybe it's too painful in this moment to do that initially, but to absorb the vitriol, to absorb the language in ways that can stop us from being poisoned by it. All I can say and all I want to say in this moment is that if we can stop, the love we say may be our own. I don't mean stop and not resume. I mean pause. I mean center. I mean sit with it, regardless of the pain. It's a lot of pain. I've absorbed a lot of pain, and I hope I haven't caused any pain, but I'm sure I have. I might be causing pain in this moment. Understanding my objective is community. And I'm not alone. Everybody here, I want to believe our collective objective is community. It's a challenging moment. Let's think about this in terms as well as ways of knowing. There are both and, as Marimba would often say, both and ways of thinking, not either or. Linda James Myers gave a brilliant presentation at our ASCAP conference, the great African-centered psychologist, Ways of Knowing convener, her optimal psychology, Dr. Linda James Myers. And one thing she talks about is that without community, we're not going to be together and not going to quote unquote make it. And guess what? We're never not in community. There's a community of self. There's a community, regardless of whether we are alone or together with each other physically in a moment. And so to be in community requires a generosity that begins with taking care of yourself. I'm not talking about self-care in that sense. What I'm saying is, okay, I'm going to say this and we're going to keep going. And I'm going to put it on me. One of the most difficult things in my life I have found is for me to be honest with myself. To give voice not only to the desire, but to the rage. Not only to the joy, but the disappointment. I'm going to say this because I almost feel a responsibility. We're here every week and, I'm furious with Justin. Furious with him. That's not even a word that I could give voice to how furious. And if I'm being completely transparent, I don't think that I am alone in this convened space to say that I, like everybody, like a lot of people in here, know a lot of men who have not that, but who have embodied that kind of whatever that was, rage, frustration is too soft a word, desperation, abandonment of all reason. And in a moment, my question for myself would be, and is there anything else I could have done to stop it? Or his family or community, the government, who could have now, far fewer if I'm going, and I've been going back through my mind, far fewer. But if I'm being completely transparent, I know some women too. Desperation, rage. In saying this, let me be crystal clear. I'm not centering him. Absolutely not. I'm not centering him except as a point of entry for the community conversation. And I'm not separating Dr. Fairfax. Oh, absolutely not. She lost her life. And so when I think about her, I think about the ultimate price. It's beyond pain. And I think about women in my life, my family, my community, who I would give my life for. And somebody put their hands on my sister, they gonna lose their life. We won't have in Class With Carr no more because Carr gonna be in jail. And so I'm thinking about how we talk with one another when the narrative frames itself in a way that's not appositional, both and, but oppositional, either or. And I'm saying, oh, stop. The love we save may be our own, because in order to intervene in this, it's going to take all of us. I don't know how we get out of it, but I know we're not going to get out of it if we're doing this, because guess what? This is the framework for the last 500 years. And the thing that has kept us out of this was this. Even when this was this. It's hard as hell to build community. It's hard as hell. It's a labor, but it's a labor of love. The myrrh, it is, listen, now let's keep going. Ways of knowing. Look, I'm willing to watch a broadcast from prison. You better stop. That's Mike Henderson. Hey, Mike, we're going to come to Joe Turner in a minute, baby. Let me take a beat here. Stop. Because I'm just, all I am saying, let me just say it in one little sentence and phrase. All I am saying is now, in a terrible moment, we saw what happened in Louisiana. We saw these things. In this moment, can we listen with each other, regardless of what is being said? Maybe even especially when what is being said is a thing we reject viscerally. Because people say, wait, you're not talking about me. Yes, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about myself. We're talking about each other. So somebody says, well, I didn't do that. Yes, you did. If you're in a community, we all in it. We're all guilty. We're all complicit. We're all joyful. We're all celebratory because we are all, if we have a community. If not, then, take what you take and go on. But if we talking about individuals, it ain't always good. That little 12-year-old Michael Jackson, very different than the one that ended up dead and the one that's in this movie. And we don't erase what happened after 1971 by just going back to 1971. That's romanticism. But by going to the beginning and coming through, we can preserve those different moments in ways that will help us. We don't turn away from the pain. We try to absorb the pain in a way that it doesn't turn to poison. That's all I'm saying. So in the ways of knowing, I'm saying that's what I'm thinking about. Thinking again with Linda James Meyer. Science and technology, the third of our 6 categories as we begin to close for today. The electronic community of the internet and the cacophony of this multitude, we can reconcile that by building community. I've been thinking a lot about multitude, a concept developed by some Italian philosophers, Antonio Negri and Michael Hart. As empire dissolves, we have the ability to build what's next by the intimate relationships. As I said, this is the way we move forward. We use that science technology to do that. Cultural meaning making. Earlier this week, I wasn't able to get away to be on the interview. I wish I had. Lamont King interviewed Cedric the Entertainer, who's on Broadway in Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Dr. Mike told us in office hours on Monday night that you should beat a path to Broadway to go see this. I hope that you get a chance to see it, Prof. I hope I get a chance to see it as well, because Joe Turner's Come and Gone is my favorite play. This is, of course, Joe Turner's Come and Gone. This is the notes. I'm not the notes. This is the play itself. This play, Samuel French, this is what, when you're an actor or actress, when you're an actor, they give you these. This is what you use generally if you don't have a different kind of book. This is the one you buy. This every play we did at Tennessee State, if it was published, we did use Samuel French. I have the other volume here, but the 10-volume cycle. And since August Wilson's birthday is the 27th, I usually spend part of that day reading August Wilson. This is Lawrence Glasgow's new book on August Wilson. It's excellent. It's called August Wilson's American Century, Life as Art. The author is the good brother Lawrence Glasgow, for many years at the University of Pittsburgh. Brilliant scholar he's professor emeritus now of history at Pittsburgh. He's written so much on him. And I wish I could have been on an interview with Lamont, because I would have asked Cedric the Entertainer some different set of questions than Lamont asked. Is just saying, because I have a different base of knowledge. And one of the things I would have asked him about is this question. Cedric is playing Seth Holly. Seth and Bertha Holly. Bertha Holly is being played by Taraji Henson. This is the play. They own a boarding house. The play is set in 1911 in Pittsburgh. And the Hollies own a boarding house in Pittsburgh where people come to stay, get themselves right, and then they go forward. The central character, there are two central characters in that kind of use that space to write themselves. One is an African conjurer, so to speak, a worker in Africana ways of knowing. His character's name is Bynum Walker. He's played by Ruben Santiago Hudson in the current play, which is being directed by Debbie Allen, which is interesting because her sister, Felicia Rashad, directed it a little while ago. And the heart of that play, however, is the relationship between a character named Harold Loomis. Harold Loomis is a brother who got caught up by some Europeans and ended up doing 7 years in virtual slavery by a guy named Joe Turner, who's based on a real life character, this white man whose brother was the governor of Tennessee. And after captivity, after our period of human trafficking, after slavery, they would get black men caught up on trumped up charges. And then the governor and them, after they pass these laws, get these guys captured, they would send them off to the governor's brother and would working on chain gang on a plantation, basically put them back in slavery. 13th Amendment triggered because it's allowed, right? So the play that August Wilson writes, which is the third of his century cycle, if you look by dates, 1911, that play is set in the boarding house, and Harold Loomis is there with his daughter, Zonia Loomis, because while he was on the plantation after slavery was over, his wife leaves with the daughter, and they end up in Pittsburgh. And so Loomis has found his daughter, but now he's looking for his wife. I'm not gonna go through the whole play. You got to go see it. August Wilson called this his favorite play. He also called it his African play because it is all about these confrontations. In fact, I've read you all this before, but I love reading it. And we're going to kind of wind up after this. I love this play. These are the play notes at the beginning. Y'all have heard me talk about this before. If you want to hear more about it, because I reread Joe Turner last night, you can go look at In Class Session 42. That's the one entitled Ma Rainey, Stephen Biko, Negro Leagues, and the 1776 Commission. Remember, that's that commission that Bozo put in place when he was in office the first time, anticipating this year. So we'll probably come back to that during our semi-quincentennial wars as we continue, as we get toward July. Go look at Session 44 as well, which was titled John Hope Franklin and Institutional Knowledge. So we talk about August Wilson extensively. But in that first, in Session 42, I tell the story, which I'll abbreviate here. I saw August Wilson shortly before he made transition. He came to Howard University, got an honorary degree. He was sick with the cancer that would take his life. And so he was kind of on the microphone with his voice raspy and croaking. And he recited these notes that begin the play of Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Except for he didn't have the play because he wrote it and he did it verbatim. And I remember when he stood up, he said, "I stand here in my grandfather's shoes." And when he said that, because I sit here in my grandfather's clothes. Haskell Carr out of East Tennessee, Thomas Hayes Sr. out of the fields in Opelika, Alabama. And I sit here in my grandmother's clothes. Gussie Hayes out of Alabama. And a woman I never met physically because she had a brain aneurysm in the 1950s, long before I was born. Mama Della Carr, whose grave I saw for the first time in my life this summer when I went to her daughter and my auntie's funeral in East Tennessee in Cookeville. And we found the gravestone, finally. Uncle Charles and his wife, my Aunt May, go out there every week to put fresh flowers on the grave. And I was a grown-ass man before I saw the gravestone. But I sit here in their shoes. So when Wilson said, I stand here in my grandfather's shoes, oh my God. And then he recited the following words. He said, "From the deep and near south, the sons and daughters of newly freed African slaves wander into the city." He means Pittsburgh. He means that boarding house that is the site for Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Even though by 1911, most of those Africans from the Deep South hadn't arrived in Pittsburgh. That's going to happen in the 30s and 40s, which lays the foundation for Fences and all those other plays that come out. The Piano Lesson, which is staged on Broadway after Joe Turner's Come and Gone. He goes on, he says, isolated, cut off from memory, having forgotten the names of the gods and only guessing at their faces, they arrive dazed and stunned, their hearts kicking in their chest with a song worth singing. They arrive carrying Bibles and guitars, their pockets lined with dust and fresh hope, marked men and women, seeking to scrape from the narrow, crooked cobbles and the fiery blasts of the coke furnace a way of bludgeoning into a new identity, the malleable parts of themselves, as free men of definite and sincere worth. Foreigners in a strange land, they carry as part and parcel of their baggage a long line of separation and disbursement, which informs their sensibilities and marks their conduct as they search for ways to reconnect, to reassemble, to give clear and luminous meaning to the song, which is both a wail and a whelp of joy. There's a reason why August Wilson names the character searching for his song Herald, as in angelic herald, Loomis, as in luminosity. If you've seen the play Joe Turner's Come and Gone, you know where it goes. If you read the script, Joe Turner's Come and Gone, you know where it goes. If you get a chance to see this play, go see it, because it was Delroy Lindo who went to Yale on an off day from a play he was in New York. He went up there to see Joe Turner's Come and Gone in 1986. Who was playing Harold Loomis on stage? Charles Dutton. You see that? Charles Dutton played Harold Loomis there. Delroy Lindo, who I got a chance to meet Delroy Lindo one time so far in my life. And I remember talking with him and I said, man, Joe Turner's Come and Gone, brother. He just shook his head and we look at each other. That's a beautiful brother, Delroy Lindo. He shook his head. He said, man, he told all of us this. He said, I knew I had gotten Harold Loomis right in Joe Turner's Come and Gone when I looked down in the stage and there was a black woman sitting there looking at me in absolute terror. And I said, yeah, I know I got it right there. But look at this. He was so moved, he came back to the city and he said, he told the people he was in the play with in New York, he said, man, y'all got to go see this play. Y'all got to go see this play. And they said, well, what's it about? He said, I don't know. He said, I just knew instinctively that it was something that had something to do with me and that touched me very deeply, even though I couldn't explain what the play was about. Well, if you look at these notes, Charles Dutton played Harold Loomis in the play that Delroy Lindo saw. And then you look again, look at who plays it the following time it's staged. Harold Loomis is played by Delroy Lindo. Harold Lewis is played by Delroy Lindo in D.C., in New York on Broadway. He plays it. Now, you know who was in the cast both times? The wife that he eventually finds, Martha, now Pentecost. Pentecost tells you what you need to know. Her name was Loomis too, but by the time they encounter each other, her name is Pentecost. Yes, you probably know where this is going. This is African play. Who plays him? Her? Angela Bassett. With Charles Dutton, Angela Bassett at the bottom with Delroy Lindo both times. Angela Bassett in this play the first time it was staged when she was at Yale Rep. I hope Cedric Entertainer can bring off Seth Holly. I'm sure he can, because I think that character is closer to his temperament. This is the first his Broadway debut for he and Taraji P. Henson. But I promise you, it's a play you really do want to go. Debbie Allen has said this play pushes the audience's belief and pushes them to a spiritual experience that is very, very real, especially for Black people. She put together a 40-page study guide for the cast that is doing this play right now. Before it started, I don't know if there's an actor alive, woman or man or anybody who is more immersed in the work or more committed to the work of August Wilson than Ruben Santiago Hudson, who I know you know, Prof, as we come to a conclusion here. He said, my character, Bynum Walker, who's the spiritualist who helps in this whole process, he says, my character was enslaved. He said, so I had to do a lot of research. And August demands that you do research so I can present authenticity to you. August Wilson is quoted in here in this book. He is a convinced nationalist. He's a nationalist, but his nationalism is complicated. In fact, this chapter 12 of Glasgow's book is called Coping with Black Nationalism. And he writes about Joe Turner's Come and Gone. He says that just before Joe Turner's Come and Gone is debuts on Broadway, it's a play that had numbers, made numbers, but not the numbers that the other plays, the first two plays made, because in part, they think, Glasgow think this play, black people, white people like, okay, this is cool, but it ain't, again, anyway, my point is this. He gives a speech. In fact, let me see, can I do this as we close? He gives a speech grappling with Black nationalism. Let me go to chapter 12. This is a great book, by the way. Glasgow put his foot in this book. He said, he gives a lecture entitled, here it is, in March 1988, at Pittsburgh's Carnegie Music Hall, Wilson delivered an angry lecture he titled, quote, Blacks, Blues, and Cultural Imperialism, end quote. The talk featured exactly the sort of racial, quote, agitprop, end quote, that Friedman and other theater critics said he avoided. There was these white critics and black critics, like, they glad August Wilson don't get into the black stuff all heavy. Yeah, you go see Joe Turner. He said, but this speech, he said, it was delivered to a predominantly white audience who likely had come to the talk expecting a heartwarming story on how Pittsburgh had laid the foundation for his latest success. Many were left squirming in stunned silence. Throughout his talk, Wilson denounced, quote, white cultural imperialism, end quote, describing it as a centuries-old conspiracy to control the behavior of black people by controlling their culture. During slavery, he insisted, quote, cultural imperialists, end quote, stripped enslaved Africans of their African culture. When they responded by creating new blues-based culture, the cultural imperialists worked to destroy that through a seemingly benign appropriation process that continues to the present. And he goes on. Man, Wilson laced into him, and then 2 weeks later, Joe Turner's Come and Gone made its Broadway debut. Wilson writes about how he's so inspired by Romare Bearden. He talks about the 3 B's. Baraka, Bearden, and the blues. He said, that's what informs my cycle, informs my plays. He said he wrote so that if however long from now somebody came to Earth wanting to know about black culture in the United States in the 20th century, each one of them plays is designed to give you a glimpse into what it was. Piano Lesson, I would make the argument too, is also an African play, but sure it is. But Joe Turner's Come and Gone, because all the elements are there. Christianity versus African spirituality, women and men, which is where, as I'm coming to a conclusion, I'm saying as we think about this in terms of movement and memory, whether it be a Michael movie that ain't gonna be the history as such, I would just go back and rewatch the Jacksons, An American Family with Lawrence Hilton Jacobs and them, why not? And Angela Bassett, come on, Angela, great choices you've made. The traumas of whiteness and entertainment and celebrity, we will embrace these things because they're put before us, but they often will lead to an addictive embrace, and we might miss the moment. In a moment like this, with these stagings and these plays, I'm thinking about Joe Turner's Come and Go now as we close, movement and memory, as you pass things on from generation to generation to generation to generation, as we come week after week in this formation to remind ourselves of the theme of study, what it means to study and to sit and to be silent and then be in conversation. When I think of that status, I think of August Wilson. Of that work, I think of August Wilson. Wilson said, I was looking at a Bearden collage. And in that collage was a small representation of a man looking sideways, looking small. He said, I identified with that guy. And out of that identification was born Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Someone who felt isolated, someone who felt apart, someone who looks to be experiencing pain from distance. We're at a very sensitive moment, y'all, together. Somebody in here right now comes every week, comes every day, looking for that safe space. And whatever the cost to those of us who all have felt that, at whatever that costs to ourselves, which is a steep cost sometimes, we have to make sure that that person, just like Harold Loomis in that boarding house, has the space to find herself, has the space to find himself. Because if we don't, just like Zonia Loomis, Harold Loomis and Martha Loomis's daughter, who represents the next generation. I hope y'all picking up on what I'm saying. If we don't do that, then the next generation is going to inherit that intergenerational assault and replicate it. But we got to stop. The love we save may be our own.
There's that.
Oh,
I don't know. Fix that.
Hold up. Let me mute myself.
Okay. Number one, Cedric Kyles, Cedric the Entertainer, Cedric Kyles. I did a book with him called Grown Ass Man. He's actually born on my birthday as well. I think he's probably going to be amazing on Broadway because there's so much depth to that human being beyond the laughter. So if you want to go see it, let me know. Secondly, I wish people with microphones would be more responsible with the awesome responsibility you have to talk to people. And it's okay to not say anything. Silence is golden. And, two, I want to actually, let me add this. Hold on, let me remove this. It's not showing up. There we go. Yeah, I just want to center Dr. Serena Fairfax. Because her life was taken from her. She didn't just lose it. It was taken. But I also think about the two children that were in the home. I don't know. I have no words for what the rest of their lives will be, to lose both of their parents and to be home, to find their mother. One of the sons found the mother, called 911. I don't know what that child's experience is going to be, the third child as well. And I just, again, I think we are trying to find answers, and then sometimes there's no answer. And this doesn't reflect it's not you, and I think we're always trying to find ourselves in something, which is community, which is what you're talking about today, which is what we talk about all the time. We try to find the meaning of that, and somehow, like, could this be me? Or like, how could I have done something? The question that you asked, what could I have done to prevent this? And there might not be an answer, and that's okay. Like, we really do need to grow up as people, and to mature in a way that is, right now, that desperation that you talk about, Dr. Carr, we need grown-ups in this time. We need to stop cosplaying at life. We need to stop pretending that we have answers when we don't. And we need to grow the F up, because it's that time, and it's the only way we're going to get forward. So I just want to honor Dr. Serena. I had a Nubian actually was sitting in a parking lot at 8 a.m. for a dentist appointment because she served the community when he found out that she was no longer here. Like, I just think about all the people that she served in the community, in the office. If you go to her website, which I did, all of those people that work with her. And it was a very diverse, if you know what I'm saying, diverse group of people who serviced the community that under Dr. Serena Fairfax's tutelage. What's going to happen? So it's a reverberative. Anytime trauma comes into play, it's the ripple effect, and it's the lasting effect that we're in it right now. You talk about 500 years. We're dealing with the epigenetics of what happened 500 years ago. And so we're going to have to heal on so many levels. But, in the moment, it's okay to be quiet. It's okay. Well, come on back, Dr. Carr. Come on back. I'll be quiet now.
We're both going to be quiet.
Okay.
You're going to ring that bell. Ashe. Ashe. Monday night, y'all, we're going to set the table. We'll do a bit of an overview on Howard French's most recent book. And so y'all get ready. On office hours, we'll be doing the second emancipation. And then the following week, we'll get into it. We're going to do the second emancipation. We'll start on Monday night, just kind of with a general conversation of where this fits in the larger space. But that's a beautiful place for us to be quiet and think about things. Enjoy your birthday weekend. I will absolutely let you know. We'll sync up because I definitely want to go. Africans, if you're going to the play, you're going to be encouraged to do what Denzel Washington and Viola Davis, I'm sure, were expecting, but still, such professionals, they did not break the fourth wall. When we went to see Fences and Negroes were talking to the stage, I'm sure Denzel and Viola wanted to say, well, y'all should, but they didn't. So when we go, so I can't wait to go. I hope to go with you to go see your friend, because I want to see how they bring this off, because this play right here, like Daryl Lindo says, his favorite play, but like August Wilson said, this is my African play. So I want to see how they do this. So yeah.
You got Taraji, Howard.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
We'll see. We will see. Yeah, I think they're perfectly clad. Debbie Allen, again, I'm wondering now. I want to ask Dean Rashad. Okay, so was y'all doing this to see who did the best? I mean, you might talk to them both before, but I mean, like, I want to see now. Is this between the sisters? Did y'all pick this play together because y'all trying to, is this, if it is, the only thing we get is the blessing of the competition. But I think in terms of the casting, I think putting those two in the position of the ones who manage the boarding house, I think that would be the perfect role for either of them. So it'd be interesting to see how they inhabit that role, because the way that, and I heard him say that the way that Wilson wrote that role, I think speaks to their strengths. So it'd be interesting to see. So anyway, we'll see.
Right. I want to end.
Oh, yeah, please. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't even know what Flip Wilson looks like.
You know what? If you all started, if you can't, you'll go back now and watch from the beginning. But if you came after we started, Prof, will you set this up for us, please? Because you talked a little bit about Flip Wilson, and we started with Michael Jackson.
Okay. This is Flip Wilson, who had the number 2 show in the country for 2 years running, from 1970 to 1971. It was only second to Marcus Welby, MD, if you know, you know, and the Lucy Show. Lucille Ball came after him. More people watched him than Lucille Ball. He was a comedian who would dress up as Geraldine, and the devil made him do it. But this man, before there was a Dave Chappelle doing sketch comedy, before there was a Living Color, before any of those people, there was Flip Wilson. And he, before even in the midst, as you mentioned, and I love Ed Sullivan, but Flip Wilson was where we got a lot of our cultural cues, and I don't think we talk enough about them. So I wanted to start at the beginning, and you're going to see the Jacksons. Thank you so much, Dr. Carr. Love you all. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now it's my pleasure on the Flip Wilson Show to present for your entertainment 5 of the most exciting young performers in America today, the Jackson 5. Watch out!